As we start up another episode of The More You NoCo today, I want to tell you about the Northern Colorado Eagles, formerly the Colorado Junior Eagles. This is a local hockey team who has decided to donate 2 tickets to one of their games on December 1st. This prize comes alongside 4 different gift cards to breweries in the area, 2 restaurant gift cards, and a credit to Card My Yard Greeley, a business we learned all about in episode 34. If you're interested in attending this junior hockey game or signing yourself up to possibly win any of the other gifts, please check out the intro of episode 32 featuring Colin Jones of WeldWorks Brewing and get those sweet details. So let us not delay, and on with the episode. Hello again. Welcome back. And if this is your first episode, then hello and welcome to The More You NoCo. I'm your host, Ivan Wayne. This show is the Northern Colorado podcast, taking a highlighter to the people and happenings of the areas north of Denver. Today's guest is Cheri Corrado of Wagz Pet Market and Grooming. Stay tuned for our discussion about ethic considerations for dogs, people, and our rising usage of technology. But wait, I thought this was a grooming and pet store episode. Don't worry, we cover that too, including the new mobile Wagz grooming van. With today's episode, you are certainly in for a treat. I bring you Cheri Corrado. Hello and welcome everyone out there. It's always kind of strange because I want to say good morning as if this were radio, but people could be listening to this at any time of the day. So I'll just say welcome to everyone out there. I sit here on location with Cheri Corrado, the owner of Wagz Pet Market and Grooming. So good morning.
Good morning.
And we sit here in downtown Fort Collins, right in the hustle and bustle of, I feel like, the entertainment district. So this is a great location to be.
Yeah, we not only have a lot of people walking by, but we get a lot of paw traffic. So lots of dogs walking by, coming in, which we love. Sometimes we have people even looking for dogs. Is there a dog here I can pet? And often there is. So, yeah. Do
you feel like your location people find easily down here?
Yeah, it's interesting. We get probably, depending on the time of year, but we get a lot of tourists and a lot of locals. And so the tourists tend to find us. If we go to an event, South Fort Collins, that sort of thing, we find sometimes people don't know who we are or where we're from, which is funny. But anybody, I think, who spends a fair amount of time downtown probably has seen us. Or I used to come here before I even bought Wagz. And I think if you have a dog, you're going to be aware of it pretty much if you're downtown.
So you mentioned bought Wagz, and we were talking before we started recording. That occurred in 2017. So you mind regaling us with this story?
Wagz was opened in 2007 by Matt and Kristen Gauthier. It's had a couple evolutions. They had a bakery at one point where they did dog treats, and then they turned it into grooming. Over the course of 10 years, they had children, they had ailing parents, and that sort of thing, and they just didn't have the time to put into it, but they loved it. So they were looking for someone to kind of carry the torch forward. At that time, I was looking for a new business, and I've always been a business owner or consultant for business, and wanted to do something fun, and spent a lot of time with my dog, who has all kinds of, has had a lot of joint issues. Thought working with dogs would be fun, and went to grooming school and learned about that, and just started looking for businesses and found Wagz was for sale, which was shocking to me. Like, I just thought, wow, could that be possible that it's Wagz. And we met. It was great. It was actually one of the easiest things I've done in business as far as, a purchase, a sale, that sort of thing. They were great to work with. They still come in the shop. And, it was a good transition. We kept the whole staff. It's been a great experience. And I think it was good for them, too. They were excited that I was going to keep the name Wagz, kind of keep it in its same intention that they started it with.
Were you a customer of Wagz before this?
I wasn't a big customer. It was one of the reasons I was excited it was Wagz, is that I didn't find myself downtown a ton, and I wanted to be. It was why I moved to Fort Collins, was that I loved the downtown area, and then I just found that my life kept taking me in other directions, and I really just wanted to be home. I feel like Fort Collins is truly my home, and so I love that I come downtown every day and that it's made me more active in the community, and I'm a member of the Downtown Business Association, so I go to the meetings and the chamber. I've gotten to know a lot of the other owners and people who work in the shops downtown, and that's been really fun. So I've really enjoyed that.
Now, were you a member of the Downtown Business Association and the Chamber beforehand, or that's all been within the last year?
I had been a member of the Chamber when I was a business consultant. I didn't know about the Downtown Business Association. I wasn't working downtown a lot, and I found out about it when I purchased Wagz. They told me this might be a good thing for you, and it's been amazing. They keep us educated and informed on what's going on. We share ideas, and we are always, I found that they help the city understand the needs of the business owners when they're having these big events, or all the construction that's gone on and how it impacts the business owners severely. There was a meeting that we had with the city that I think the DBA asked for when they were going to do the utilities on Walnut. And there was some really emotional business owners who had already been shut down basically for Walnut Street issues. They heard it, and they changed their plan, and they broke it up into smaller increments. And the DBA has been doing a great job of trying to market Walnut Street and help those business owners who've really had a rough time with the street being shut down a lot.
I've seen a lot of the construction around downtown, and I don't know why this is the first time I'm considering this, but wow, it impacts businesses, and especially the way they'll have to block off sidewalks sometimes. It may even keep people from getting to that business, and so it's interesting to hear this play of, well, Fort Collins as a whole, we want progress, we want to be able to do construction, but at the same time, like, how do we get businesses through that process?
Yeah, it's tough because downtown you have, I think they said there was like over 14,000 employees down here, and sales tax, even though we're a small geographic area, we pay a good percentage of the sales tax in Fort Collins. We are really pretty important to the success and the finance of the city. So to keep our businesses very functional is going to be important to not just for our own personal revenues, but for the city revenues. It has been important to have our businesses stay open, even through construction. We haven't been as impacted because we're right on College, but Walnut Street has actually taken a pretty big hit over the last few years. And then when there's events, that impacts it. Even though it brings people, it also, there are some businesses that have a harder time when there's a lot of events.
Right.
So.
Well, say there's a beer fest down here right in front of Wagz. It doesn't mean that you're going to get more business from dog and cat owners because it's a beer event. It's not, even though it's good foot traffic in the area, it doesn't mean it's always going to benefit you.
Yeah, it's been interesting as which things have and which things haven't. The weather also has a big play in it. So at the lighting ceremony this year, the weather was great. So people were out and about, and they were shopping and wandering and enjoying the downtown area. So we had a really good night. So some things are really beneficial. And it's a give or take. It depends on what kind of business you have as to whether or not it's going to really impact you one way or the other.
You mentioned that Fort Collins, at least now, seems like home. Are you from the area?
I'm not. I'm from the East Coast, from the D.C. area. I can't really even explain why I decided to move to Colorado. I hadn't been here much. I actually hadn't been to Fort Collins at all when I decided.
You just listened to a John Denver song and said, I'm getting on the road.
Yeah, I had visited friends in Steamboat, and that was a little too snowy for me. But there was just something that drew me to Colorado, and I went back after a trip to visit my friends in Steamboat. And I was back in Northern Virginia, and I just kept thinking I want to live in Colorado. And I called my friends, and I was thinking of Boulder, and she said, you should look at Fort Collins. And so I went to both, and I spent a week in both. During that time, I met my current husband. Didn't know it at the time, but so by the time I moved here, it was about I came out here in end of September to really consider moving, and met him that first trip. And by December, we were a couple, and then we moved in together in April at his daughter's request. Actually, they were moving in together, and they were moving here. He was in Niwot, and I was moving here, and she was a teenager, and she just thought, should we just all just live together? Which we were shocked.
Wow.
But we became an instant family, and she's just amazing, and it's been great.
That's great. What year was this?
I came out here the first time in 2010. And then I moved here in April of 2011.
Okay.
I love it. This is definitely home to me. The feel of Colorado is just very different than other places I've been. And on the East Coast, the vibe is a lot more intense and chaotic. That's not good or bad. It just is different. I got tired of that, I think. I got tired of always being on the move. And I tend to be a busy person anyway. I'm always doing something. I'm generally a person of action, and it wasn't that, but there was just, people are just so much more friendly and relaxed. I went to my very first chamber meeting before I moved here. It was the evening after hours thing, so it was a big event. And by the time I left, I had like 3 hugs. Like, people were just like, oh, we can't wait till you move here and let us know what you need. And I was like, wow, that would never happen in DC. So it just, from the very first days I came here by myself downtown and just met people at the coffee shop, or it was just interesting how conversations would start with people I didn't know. Some people I saw again, some people I didn't, but I remember I had lunch with a guy that I met in a coffee shop, and then that was that. It was nice, and we enjoyed it, and we just had different worlds and didn't cross paths again. But when you don't know anybody in town, it's kind of nice. So it was. I met somebody also who retired here, and he was in the service, and so he had traveled all over the world, and he told me this was the place he chose to retire. And so it was some of it was these stories that from meeting people here in Fort Collins, that I decided it was Fort Collins where I wanted to be. That didn't happen in Boulder like it did in Fort Collins. Not that I don't love Boulder too,
right.
But Fort Collins, there's just such a connection with the community that I really enjoy that I've never had before anywhere else I've lived.
I came out here with a friend who went to the Air Force Academy for a camping trip outside of Pikes Peak. And that's what encouraged me to move here. I stepped out of the car, got a whiff of mountain air, saw Pikes Peak, and I said, I will be here. And I moved 3 months later.
Wow.
And so I've been in Greeley since 2014.
Yeah, it took my husband years. He took a cross-country trip when he was 12 and decided to move to Fort Collins and didn't get here until later in his adult. He's been here for about 20 years.
And for those who don't know, Niwot's right outside of Boulder.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
It's a cute little town.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before Wagz, you've been a business owner and a business consultant before. What industries were you involved in before coming to Wagz?
On the East Coast, I actually still own some businesses, mostly real estate related and family businesses. We have some real estate offices, and we own the West Virginia region of Keller Williams Realty. So we sell the franchises.
Okay.
And we started our own payroll company, which just takes care of our own businesses, just real estate related. Real estate was never my passion, though. It was my mother's passion, and I kind of was helping her and got kind of tied into it and really enjoyed Keller Williams and learned a lot. And it was a very learning-based company at the time, and kind of just grew up and learned so much about business. And then when I decided to really move out of that role, I trained under we had a consultant. We had a business consultant he was in Charlottesville, Virginia, and a brilliant, brilliant man, Bain Henyon. And so he started training. He trained 5 or 6 of us. It was me and 4 or 5 other guys. And it was so much fun. And I learned a lot. His model for consulting was really for big business, like big corporations. And I found that wasn't my passion. It was really small businesses that I wanted to help. So I kind of tweaked that and trained on EOS, which is the system that the book Traction from Gino Wickman teaches. And I trained under that, and I thought it was brilliant, and I use a lot of that today. But with business consulting, you have to go out and sell yourself. And I'm not good at that. So that was actually the pain point for me in that business, was I have to go get clients. I love working with them. I love helping people in their business. But the other thing I found I missed was having my own team. And actually, when you're a business consultant and you're on your own, yes, you're working with other people and other businesses, but not on your team. You're kind of like entering their team. Wagz gave me the opportunity, even more than I ever imagined, to work with a team that I just enjoyed. The staff that I took over, they were all just amazing. How they embraced me and helped me, and I could not have done this without them. And then we've grown since then. I've hired one of my groomers, I hired her husband, and then my other groomer, I hired her brother. They've been amazing, and we're just kind of a little bit of a family. They're all much younger than me. They're millennials, but...
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I actually like to argue people about that, because there's a lot of talk about millennials being... entitled and all of that, and that is not my experience. Mm-hmm. They are just so hardworking and gracious and helpful and curious. It's been a great experience. I bought Wagz to work with dogs, and I actually don't work with dogs that much. Like, I get to pet them, and sometimes when they're waiting for their parents, I take them back into my office so they're not in a kennel and that sort of thing. But it's my staff that I work with most, even more than the customers. I love it. They're great people, and I love when they learn things, and I like watching them grow. It was what I loved about consulting, was helping people find their genius zone and find their greatness. And so it gives me an opportunity to help people who are young and really trying to find that in themselves, help them really figure out what that is and give them the space to do that. So not everybody who's going to work here is going to be here forever, and I know that. But I hope that Wagz is a good step on their journey to whatever their greatness is and whatever they end up doing professionally and personally.
I feel like this generational down talk of millennials now from older generations, I feel like this happened when they were growing up. And then the generation before them said, oh my God, look at the
Right.
Beatles and the Rolling Stones, this demon music. Like, what are these kids doing? I hope not, but many millennials may forget this lesson. And when they get older, we will be talking about the next generation.
Right.
I feel like some of it's natural, like, children becoming parents and becoming grandparents and things changing and not really knowing how to adapt to like the culture of tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think if you don't embrace it and you don't embrace the changes, then you're not going to evolve. And I've seen people who have spent their life in a profession, and then when technology came, they really struggled because they wouldn't embrace it. They were resisting it, and when you resist something, it really is kind of counterintuitive. When you resist somebody's idea, they're just going to get stronger, right? So whatever you're resisting actually grows in power, it seems. But when you embrace it, then you can figure out how to integrate it into your world, into your life, into who you are, and be able to be more powerful yourself. But I think our nature is to resist that, which is new.
First, yeah.
I tend to be somebody who embraces change a lot more. Most people, I think, do resist change and have a hard time with it. I'm probably change things too much. And so since I've had Wagz, I've had a lot of changes, and some of them have been easy and some of them have been challenging. And my husband said, could you just next year just let Wagz just be, like just enjoy it and stop creating chaos, for yourself and trying to do something new, which is valid. Like, I feel like I've done what I needed to do. We did some renovations. We added the grooming van. We've, done some different things. We've added some staff, and I feel like it is where it needs to be. And I think it's probably going to just run itself for the next year.
For now.
For now, until something new happens. But yeah, I think we've updated computers and systems, and there's always room for improvement, and we'll always continue improving our systems and learning from any mistakes we make or whatever. But I really think that we got Wagz as a team. We've decided everything's a team decision, everything that we've done pretty much, and I think we're pretty good.
Yeah, you had mentioned this renovation when I first got here, and we took a short tour, and you had mentioned that you decided to move the cash register, the counter of service, from the right side to the left because you had mentioned that when people walk in, they tend to gravitate towards the right. Can you kind of explain that? That's super interesting.
I think the statistic is about 80% of people, when they walk in a door, they will gravitate to the right. So what was happening is people would come in, and as they gravitate to the right, there was a register there. It also took up a lot of space because it was in the middle of the store practically. And when we rearranged, we moved it to the front corner in the left. And it gave us actually a little more space for our own stuff, and it, keep it from, you've got things you're holding for customers, stuff you're receiving and you're going to put out, and you need a place to put it. And it was just kind of always in view, and now it's kind of tucked in a little corner. And we expanded the window sill so we could I put a clawfoot tub in there for our grooming display, and I just felt like it was taking up a lot of space. We also had these big oak cabinets that took a lot of floor space. And because we have dogs in here, and some of them, we have Great Danes and Malamutes and big dogs that come in, and I didn't want Wagz to feel constricted. I've been in other pet stores where you can bring in your dog, but there's so much stuff packed in there, and there's aisles, and I just, with my dog, if she's not next to me, and there's smells and there's all these things of interest that, dogs tend to be a little more excited and moving around. And so I wanted to give them space to comfortably move through the store, be able to sniff and that sort of thing. I've always said that when dogs when their nose is to the ground and they're sniffing, it's like us watching a movie, because they're getting so much stimulation and they're learning a story of who was here before, right? They're smelling other dogs and people and food and things. And so it's a stimulation and it's a story that they're getting. So this is the place for them to do that and really enjoy smelling the treats and the dogs and all of that. So it's fun to watch what dogs react to. And
walking into a pet marketplace for them has got to be like going into an amusement park of smells and sights and sounds. And oh my gosh, there's people who want to pet me. And oh my God, there's another dog. I may not have seen another dog in months.
Yeah.
It's got to be an overwhelming experience. Yeah,
and some dogs are a little overwhelmed, especially if they know they're coming from grooming. Some dogs get a little nervous about grooming. Some dogs, though, they come in. We've actually had dogs that have dragged their person in, and their person didn't even really know what this was. Oh, it's a dog store. Okay.
Oh, that's kind of good.
Yeah, and
that's
there's funny. There's a lot of people who work downtown and get to bring their dogs. And one day, one of our customers, his dog got out of the building and came here on his own accord. And so we like to be the place that dogs want to go and want to be. And it's just really fun for us. And it's been fun. We've seen a lot of puppies lately. We wrote a little book that is on it. You can download it for free on our website, and it's kind of a puppy new dog book. And we found just some of the questions people ask, or the things we found people don't realize when they get a dog, that we felt would be educational and helpful for them to know. So we talk a little bit about nutrition, about dental care. We talk about different accessories like harnesses and that sort of thing. Lately, I see a lot of prong collars, and I don't know. I just don't think people know the damage that can do.
And the prong collars,
they're the ones that poke into their neck.
Yeah, have the poking on the inside ring of the collar.
Yeah,
to keep them from pulling. Right.
Right, and if you wouldn't hit or kick your dog, which I hope you wouldn't, I don't understand why you would use something that's going to hurt your dog to keep them. When there's other harnesses, there's training, there's I think it's just a lack of understanding. I don't think anybody is neglectful or meaning to do harm to their dog. I think they're desperate to get their dog to behave, especially if it's a big dog. It's important, but there are just other ways. So we just talk about some different harnesses that we have. We have a trainer that a lot of my staff have used for their own dogs, who has written a little excerpt on training. We have that's Amber Kwan from Summit Dog Training. We had Jennifer Holmes, who teaches fitness. She actually works with my dog, and she used to be a rehab tech, which she worked on my dog when she was rehabbing, and she decided to really build a business around, let's prevent dogs from getting injured in the first place by teaching good fitness, helping dogs be really aware of how they're using their body, just like people. And dogs really need that too. So we have little bits and pieces, things about toys and just things that people don't know that might help them as they have their dog to keep them healthy.
And this is a brochure people can find on your website, right?
Yes, on our resource page.
Okay, very cool. One thing I'll add for listeners who may not know the space that we're currently talking in is the first time I've experienced having to pay attention to a podcast conversation while cute dogs are coming into the space. And I just wanted that to be thrown out there for people who don't know. There was some dogs coming in for grooming earlier.
Yeah. Sometimes our staff bring their dogs in. Actually, one of my groomers has her dog in the back. Sometimes people at the register will have their dog back there. So, we have quite a few dogs that work here. My dog doesn't particularly like it here. I think she's super sensitive, and I think I'm in the back often, and you can hear the grooming a lot better. She, I think, gets stressed by hearing the dogs who are upset getting groomed. So she doesn't like it as much. And we have a good big property, and so she'd rather be home. I
worked at a veterinarian for over 5 years. Being here brings back a part of that, and it's just nice to be around animals and dogs, and I really enjoyed that job. And it's actually kind of crazy because I had that job through high school and the first part of undergrad, and to date, that is still my longest consistent employer. I've not worked at the same place for more than 5 years since.
Wow.
And so I did not end up, I'm a PhD student in educational psychology, and I teach community college at Front Range. I'm not working with the veterinarian hospital in any form of fashion, yet it's still my longest employee to date.
I think there's actually, if you're in education, I think there's a lot to learn from dogs.
I agree.
Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to work with dogs is because I was understanding how dogs are very in tune to energy. My dog in particular is very sensitive to my energy. So if I am just sitting home working quietly on my computer, but I get an email that creates a little anxiety or something, my dog will get up from just calmly laying down and run over to me, whining and trying to figure out what's wrong. If I am upset, she reflects that, whether it's anger or sad or whatever. And what I found is it caused me to be aware of my own internal dialogue and emotions. So if I didn't even realize, hey, I'm getting all worked up about something, she's instantly telling me, hey, you're getting all worked up. And then I calm down because I need her to calm down. And so when I was learning grooming, and I don't groom full-time at all, but it's been very helpful to understand grooming. So when I've been grooming, if I am getting worked up about something or I'm feeling anxiety, my dog on the table is very anxious, and it's doing a little dance on the table, basically. And if I just take a moment and take that breath and just ground myself again, the dog will calm down. It was what I wanted. Coming from the East Coast and coming from an environment that everybody's pretty amped up, I wanted to learn how to not fall into that all the time. And I find that dogs can teach us when we're being anxious or whatever, and they can also teach us not to be. It's why they're great service dogs. It's why service dogs are becoming so big. They sense energy, so they can sense when somebody's having a nightmare. They can sense when somebody's about to have a seizure. Between their sense of energy and their sense of smell, a lot of that they actually smell because there's a chemical change that happens in our bodies a lot, right? So they teach us a lot of things if you just see how a moment is just a moment to them. They don't sit back later and after this is over, I'll probably think, why did I say that? Or why didn't I say that? We do this to ourselves.
I could have said this.
Yeah, and dogs never do that. It's over. If you come home and you've had a bad day and you yell at your dog and they kind of, go sit in the corner, and then you can feel, you come back and you're like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know, maybe just me, that does this, but it doesn't happen often, but there definitely have been the days where my dog is just wants attention. And I'm just like, not now. When I realize I've done that, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And I come back and I'm instantly forgiven. Right? There's no, well, last year you did this, or, you keep doing, they're not like us in that way of just a moment is a moment to them. And it's a great lesson for us to learn, is just not to beat ourselves up or, relive painful moments over and over again, and keep that cycle in our head. It just doesn't make sense. So
right. And I've heard this sentiment before. I feel like a lot of people share some of these thoughts about that dogs should be the archetype that we aspire to be like. However, some people still get stuck in their own head and they don't translate. I think the world would be better if we were all like dogs, and then they don't wag their tail, so to speak. They don't walk the walk.
Well, and it's hard because we are getting more at risk in our environment because we have this language and we don't use it in a very compassionate way a lot of times, especially with social media and, there's so much bullying and just negativity. And I think dogs, because they're not understanding what we're saying, they don't get that unless they're being abused or neglected. Like that's when they get it. And, and the whole breed discrimination thing is just so ridiculous because it's not the dogs, it's the people. It's how dogs are treated. Dogs do not come into this world aggressive and vicious. Yes, they'll be aggressive if they're fearful. And even in grooming, if there's a dog that tends to be aggressive, we know it's just afraid. And we may occasionally have to muzzle a dog, but often we don't. Even though it's a little aggressive, we know how to work with that dog. If a good groomer will understand. But a good groomer will also muzzle a dog when they need to, just to get the job done. Dogs need their nails clipped, and that's the hardest thing for dogs because they don't like their paws touched usually, naturally. So the more you can touch your dog's paws when they're young, the easier that'll be to get their nails clipped. But long nails actually can cause joint problems and, traction problems. And so it's important to keep their nails clipped. They definitely they're not exposed to as much negativity as we are unless they are abused. And then when they're abused, then they get aggressive and they do some really scary things. But what happens is then we take the dog and we punish the dog, and there's not a lot of punishment going on or training going on for the people who created that aggressive dog.
People should be carrying around a mirror as they also have a leash in hand with their dog.
Yeah.
And you make me think, when you said no dog breed pops out of the womb and is super aggressive and mean from the start. And I think the same way about humans.
People. It's true.
And teaching intro psych is like, I come back to this point all the time that, think about any adult. That person was a completely moldable infant at one point, just trying to learn and soak up the world, and some set of circumstances got them to here, whether that be good news or bad news.
It's how we're taught, and I just, I can't wrap my brain around discrimination in general. Like how somebody is going to judge somebody by what they look like is just baffling to me. Do we really all want to look the same? Like, how boring is that, right? But it happens with dogs too. It was, when I was a kid, it was Dobermans. Dobermans were the scary dog.
Oh, really?
And then it was Rottweilers. And then Rottweilers were the scary dog. And it just, German Shepherds. And now it's Pit Bulls, which is not even a breed, really. Pit Bulls is a large variety of breed. People just, if they have that look, people just think, oh, that's a scary dog. And actually, most American Staffies, which is a pit bull, most pitties, dogs that would be called pit bulls, are the most cuddly, loving dogs I've ever met. Like literally, like they like to cuddle. Which I think is somewhat breed specific because most of them that I've met are like that. They're very cuddly dogs. They love attention, and it's just that they are very strong dogs, and they have a very short coat, so they're easy dogs to take and use for really horrific things like dogfighting, and they're good targets for that. So I think that's what's happened with that breed is they have been used by people in a very negative, aggressive, violent way, and then that's what happens with them.
Again, product of the environment.
Exactly.
Not them, but the owners, the trainers, the people who put them in dogfights and continue that stereotype. In my time at the veterinarian, the scariest dogs that come to mind are either the smallest dogs or I think the one that comes to mind was an Australian Shepherd. And that's a breed that nobody
would
get
be afraid
struck
of
with fear when they think Australian Shepherd.
Fluffy and
but that dog was terrifying.
Yeah.
We had a certain person named Aaron at the vet who was like the dog whisperer. This guy could work with any animal and calm them down and get them through any situation. And so we always let Aaron handle that dog. And
right. And actually, for me, one of the scariest dogs I've met was a Pekingese, little tiny dog, but that thing just was going for blood. It just and it was one where it was being groomed and it was scared, and that we know that's what it was. It wasn't like it was a mean dog or anything like that. It just was a scared dog. Yeah, that's just what happens sometimes. And sometimes dogs get like that if they've lost an owner or they've had some sort of real upset in their life or neglect or abuse. And it could be any dog. It's just that I think the media has sensationalized the pit bull, but that it had happened with other breeds before. So and eventually we'll get over the pit bulls and it'll be something else.
Yeah.
A dog, I really think people should be more responsible for their dog's behavior and take the time to train them. And like we had a situation where somebody walked in with 2 dogs who he'd been traveling with. They had been in the car for hours and hours and hours. And we had a staff dog behind the counter, and the staff dog came around the corner and scared this dog, and it grabbed hold of my staff's dog, would not let go. And so it was just a scuttle of getting them apart. And thankfully, our dog had a rough wear collar, which has a lot more material on it. It had a harness on it. And so the dog actually only had the harness and not the dog, thank goodness. But it was scary. And the guy was completely like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And he was just as shocked as we were. And I think what happened was this dog was stressed. It was in a new environment. It had been locked up in a car for a while, and then this dog comes out of nowhere and scared it. They were rescue dogs, and so he also didn't know a lot of history. He had only had them, I think, for about a year, and it was just a trigger. And so you just don't know when a dog is going to be triggered by something. And it wasn't a bad dog. It wasn't even a really aggressive dog. I think the dog was just afraid to let go. He had the upper hand. And then there was the second dog that we had to keep out of the mix because, of course, he was probably going to protect his little sibling. Yeah, you just never know. So just being always aware of what's going on in the environment. And so here we try to be aware of that, and we try to know which dogs are, we have some dogs that definitely have been triggered a couple times coming in. If there's a dog that's been really aggressive, then we will ask that it doesn't come back because we have so many dogs that come and go here. We want it to be a safe environment. That was just a set of circumstances that all kind of came together, just like with people, and people kind of have something that triggers them and they explode, and that's just kind of what happened. And everybody was okay, and it's a little scary, but
all is well.
All was well in the end. But yeah, that's just the kind of thing that happens with dogs, but it doesn't make them bad or vicious. It's just they react, and instead of yelling like we do, that's what they do. They're going to take a hold of something.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens.
Some dogs only, for the most part, interact with people, and cats too.
Yes.
We have these animals that interact with humans most of the time. Could have been years since they experienced just another animal besides humans. And it reminds me, like, what a strange experience for a dog, because I have to assume that they know we're not dogs,
right?
But they're used to us, and then all of a sudden they experience this animal who reminds them of themselves in some way. So my friends have a really small dog. She's real small, white and fluffy. I don't even know what breed. It's smaller than a Shih Tzu. It's very small. They took this dog Lola and interacted with, I think it's a big dog, maybe a Great Dane. And this dog didn't know what to do with their dog Lola, who's tiny.
Right.
It was just kind of baffled by this. And it made me think, like, for the most part, many dog breeds started as the same. They started as wolves and coyotes.
Yeah.
And now we have such diversity from a Great Dane all the way down to
these little teacup,
and like whippets and the smallest dogs. How fascinating for them, not only when they meet each other, but now they're so different from what they used to be.
Yeah, and I think to your point of how dogs connect with their people, dogs are pack animals. If all they have is people, they will form their pack with people. And so I think that's why that happens, and dogs are very loyal. So when they have a bond with their people, it's no different than their bond with their dogs. I do think that there's a deep connection there for them. And I think that then when they see dogs, sometimes they think, oh, I have someone like me that I can play with that will play like I do. And sometimes they think, oh, I'm scared. What is this?
Potential danger.
Yeah. And it's funny because, little dogs can seem more vicious, but I think it's because they're so much more vulnerable. And then big dogs like Great Danes, they are so freaking adorable. Like they are the biggest scaredy cats sometimes, Yeah. They really are. They're just sweet dogs, but they're gigantic.
Right.
So, it just size does not really dictate the dog, I think. And then just they have personalities just like people. You can have two dogs from the same litter and they're completely different, just like having two children grow up in the same household and they're just different. And, learning their personalities are just as much fun, I think, with dogs as with watching children grow up.
This pack mentality you mentioned of dogs, I feel like is another lesson for humans to integrate with your community.
Yeah.
Bond with people around you and value the people around you. Why? Well, honestly, just because they're there. Because we're sharing the same space and we call the same place home. And I think there's incredible value in that for the human experience.
Yeah, and I think it's part of why so many young people are having such struggles. There's a lot more young suicides, depression, and just all of that. And I think it's a disconnection. I think my generation, I don't think we were necessarily workaholics, but just very high achievers, right? We're always striving for more. I feel like some parents either, like trying to make the best life for their children, they lacked that connection a little bit because they were focused on their work. And then I think some parents, sometimes they keep their children so protected that their child doesn't connect with the larger community, right? And it's a balance. I think, I don't think there's ever going to be a generation of parents where there isn't something that you can say, well, it's the parenting. You know what I mean? Like, I just think there's no perfect parenting. I'm not judging parents. I definitely think that is probably the hardest job in the world. But I do think it's interesting how every generation tends to have this, they seem to have a tendency towards how they raise their children and what they're teaching their children and how that impacts. And I think every generation, there's something that their parents tried to teach them with good intent or tried to protect them or whatever, then some negative thing that came out of it for some kids, right? But I do think with the social media and everything, there is somewhat of a lack of connection for the younger generations. And I do think that it's a little detrimental. And I think that we were tribal and we're not anymore, right? And
because you can't know everybody now that you come into contact with. Yeah,
and I think with tribes, I have friends on the East Coast, and they do live in a very pretty tight knit. Like they're friends, they're business owners, and they raise their kids really somewhat in a tribe. And so I remember. And I lived with them when their kids were born. We lived together, and so I lived through their first, to the children, and then as more kids came and that sort of thing. It was interesting because we could be at a big gathering, a family gathering. It wasn't one parent to one child. Everyone parented all children. So if one child started to wander, whoever adult was closest would reel them back in. And so it was kind of a interesting view of how you raise children through a tribe. And it was so beautiful, and their children are so well adjusted and, just doing so well as young adults. And just seeing that, I do think that there's some value to a community of people raising the children, not a one-on-one connection, but having influence of lots of adults and lots of different people and having some diversity and being exposed to different things to be able to grow up in a world where that's what you're going to find. Right? Yeah. You're going to find diversity. You're going to find things that are unpleasant, and you need to learn how to deal with that. And you're not going to if you're never exposed to it. Yeah. So, I do think that we learn that through community. And I think it's important for people as well as for dogs. They need that.
In class, we talk about, it starts with an A, but there's this number, and it's really predictable through psych study after psych study, that the amount of people we can intimately and personally know tends to gravitate around the number 150. And then what I ask my students is, how many of you have more than 150 Facebook friends or Instagram followers? And you find every hand in the room goes up,
Yeah.
It used to be getting to know 150 people might be difficult depending on where you lived. And now, if we can connect online, that 150 happens pretty fast.
But are you getting to know those people?
That's the point, is that you can't.
Right.
We're finding that psychologically, we fill up our reservoir of being able to intimately and personally connect with people around 150, and I think there's like a plus minus standard deviation of 13 or 16. So it's not huge. It's not like some people's capable of knowing 250 and 300. It's not.
Right.
We're seeing gets up to maybe 170.
Right.
But I think many of us are trying to stretch that number. And what comes with that is anxiety. And, oh my gosh, I can't know all these people. And so some of us keep going, chugging along, and try to know this many people, and that is going to be taxing on your brain. And some people may go the opposite way and kind of withdraw and say, I don't even know where to start with people anymore, and so I'm not going to reach out. And I think it's overwhelming. And it's nothing negative, I think, that we're doing. And people who've listened to multiple episodes know that social media tends to come up time and time again. Not even, I have to say, for listeners out there, it wasn't me this time.
Right.
You know, it's like it comes up. And I think it's finding how do we use an online presence now to make meaningful community. Which brings me to a question I was going to ask you. And you are a product of this Instagram community that I've found from Northern Colorado. And I want to say that the last 12 or 13 guests on the show have either been from Instagram or a personal recommendation from someone I connected with on Instagram. And so there's, I'm using it in a positive way, even though it could be, having a negative toll.
For our business, something like Instagram is helpful because it's visual. People want to see cute dogs, right?
And I do enjoy that on my Instagram feed.
Yeah. We have dogs here that have their own Instagram account.
Of course.
It definitely helps. People like to see groomed dogs. They like to see what's new in the shop as far as our products and our toys and our treats, and our cookies sell like crazy because they're so cute. I do think that there's some value to it, and I think, again, you have to be careful about keeping that connection, finding a way to connect, even though, I think Instagram and social media in general should just be a tool in our toolbox in the bigger scheme of connecting to people, right? It's, maybe it's reminding you of your somebody's birthday so that then you can connect, but if you're just connecting on social media, are you connecting? Right. Are you calling them? Are you texting them? Are you, reaching out to them? I've actually withdrawn myself from Facebook because I fell into that of just, I'll be on Facebook and I'll see what they're doing and stuff. And I'm not big on, I personally don't post a lot. So I found that I thought I was connected to some degree because I knew what was going on in other people's lives, but I wasn't, because there was not a conversation. Like you said, I want to sit down and have a conversation with you. That conversation tends to suffer because of social media, I think, or on social media, not because of, but on social media. I don't think you can have as much of a conversation of let's sit down and have a heart-to-heart, face-to-face. I think that's important. But I still think that for businesses and even for people, there's some value in let's post things and let's show everybody what we're doing, and what's up, and some cute doggy pictures.
Do you want to help this person? They rang the bell a couple times.
Open.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, the door gets locked and people can't come in for grooming.
Yes, but I saw, do they ring a bell and then
yes,
people
there's
in the
a bell that rings in the back, but they're drying. So sometimes, when they're using the dryers, they're very loud. So they have earmuffs, like air traffic controllers. And we have what's called a happy hoodie for the dogs. So it's kind of like a big headband that we put over their ears to kind of protect a little bit from the sound, because
nice.
it's pretty loud back there.
Yeah. I had noticed that during our interview, people keep coming to the door. It's locked, but then somehow people in the back know to come up from the front. But then this time, I noticed that she, outside the door, rang some sort of doorbell. And I was like, oh, okay, you have a smart system here.
Yeah, so grooming starts usually about 7 or 8, but our shop itself doesn't open until 10. So we can't leave the door unlocked all the time.
Thank you.
But you're welcome.
I did ring the bell. But
yes, they couldn't hear you over the dryers. Yeah.
I'll be back.
Thanks. Yeah, so we have a doorbell out there for our grooming clients in the mornings when they come in before the shop's open, because the grooming is in the very back of the store, so they can't even always see people at the door.
Right.
If the dryers are on, sometimes it's still hard to hear the doorbell.
Yeah.
So they try to keep an eye out when they know they have appointments coming.
Well, getting back to your point about social media, I really like your point about It should supplement how we interact with people we already know. It's not like if I have a friend and I just kind of start watching their life unfold on Facebook, it can't stop there because they don't know I'm looking.
Right.
They don't know I'm talking about, like, showing people, oh my gosh, did you see Stacy had this and this and this? And Stacy may not even know that I care. I think it's a great tool to add on top of a relationship outside of it. Like, pretend that social media, pretend that we didn't have a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we had no Tumblr, none of that, no Snapchat. Now how do you feel about your relationship with that person? And if the answer is, well, not great, I'd like it to add more, what are we waiting for?
Yeah, I think there's the benefit is, I mean, we travel and I have friends all over the world, and I wouldn't be able to maintain that in any way without social media. You know, you can kind of go check on them and that sort of thing. And as the world gets smaller in that way of people, now that we have planes and that sort of thing, you know, people they move all over the place. Whereas, you know, back before planes, people pretty much stayed in the same area. How do we stay in touch? It does help. You know, you find out when people are suffering a loss or even a bad day, you know, you find out. But I think the trick is, what do we do with that information? And I'm just as guilty of just writing something on their little post.
I mean, I am too.
And not picking up the phone or, you know, that sort of thing. And so I got off of it for the most part. I go on there every once in a while, but I'm not on there regularly. It's not on my phone anymore because it does become kind of a habitual thing, right? I try to make a mental note, and unfortunately time does go by, and I think, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to so-and-so in so long, right? The more that I'm off of Facebook, the more it reminds me to call them, you know, to just send a message, to text, or to just send a little bit, you know, just more intimate kind of communication.
And coming back to what you said, being like dogs. Yeah. We should forgive ourselves. We should forgive other people. Time passes. We get busy. It'll always be part of just the nature of being conscious and being human that stuff in person takes precedent. It's an easier reminder to stay connected with people around us than it is people at distance. And so forgive ourselves, but also forgive other people. And if we haven't talked to someone in 4 months and they call us, don't pick up the phone and say, oh my gosh, glad the phone works, you know?
Right.
Like, no, just jump right in, leave where you left off, and you know, let's be more like dogs. So.
And I think that's a great thing about friendships. One of my very, very best friends, definitely my longest friend, we met when we were like 7 years old. And when we were young, I don't know, I was probably a preteen, she moved away. And we stayed friends. And then she moved back years later when she was in college. We could not talk for a couple of months and then pick up the phone or see each other. And it's like we've never parted. Yeah. And it's those kinds of friendships that will always stay connected, but there still has to be some effort. I mean, back then we used to write letters to each other, you know, when we were kids. And I think it's important to have those relationships that you know are just always going to be there, but not take them for granted. And it's that balance, right? The hard balance of how do we stay connected and also keep up with our busy lives when people aren't right in front of you. You're always dealing with the people. You know, if you're working in a store, you're dealing with the customer who's standing right at the register before somebody on the phone, or certainly before somebody on the computer. So that's how life is as well. You know, it's our people who are physically in front of us that get most of our time. Yeah. But there's people that are equally important that aren't as close.
We just got to keep watering all those different flowers.
Yeah.
Come back to them. Don't forget them too long. Give them a little bit of sunshine, some water. And that's part of, you know, what we were talking about with the pack mentality. Is some of that now is digital. And they're people that we grew up with and we don't live next to them. But you still get that anxiety-reducing, community-felt experience with people that you grew up with. And those friendships you know are here to stay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's important to have those, and it's important to, if they're far away, to engage in whatever community you're in. Yeah. And I think that in the D.C. area, everything just felt so spread out. You were always in a different town. Like every day you were crossing
like
town
different
lines.
suburbs.
Yeah. Or going into the city. And so there wasn't here. One of the things I always just marvel at is that my whole life can be contained in Fort Collins. I can still travel. I can still go other places, but I can go to all of my shopping and doctors and friends and all of that right here, and not have to get in the car and sit in traffic for an hour to go visit somebody and have dinner, So I think that has its value, and I've really enjoyed that about Fort Collins and enjoyed just how friendly people are. So even if you don't know somebody, the fact that they'll smile and say hello when you're walking down the street just has some value in how you feel in your day, right? If you're walking down the street and nobody's looking at anybody and there's just no connection whatsoever, it's a very different place than, where you see people sometimes every day that you don't know. You walk down the street and you see similar people. I go to the bank twice a week to do our deposits and get to know the tellers and see them. And it's just a different feeling, and you just feel good about it.
Coming up on time, and I don't want to end this broadcast before talking about your grooming van, your mobile operation that we were talking about before we got started. We want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we wanted to expand grooming a little bit. We were, for a while there, we were booked out for like 2 or 3 weeks where you couldn't get in. And we were losing customers because of it, because we had new customers. And so we thought about expanding the grooming within the store, and then decided, well, that still limits us to people who come downtown. So we decided to get mobile grooming. There was a mobile groomer in town who was retiring. Grooming is hard physically. It really is. And so it was taking a toll on her body. And so she decided it was time. So we bought the van, we rewrapped it. And so we're still building that business and getting our own clientele. We kept some of hers. But it's a service. We can only do small dogs and dogs that don't have a ton of fur. So it runs on a generator. So we take the dog inside our van. We have a generator to run the dryers and all of that. It does, drying a fluffy dog, it just takes a lot of time, and it's a big toll on the generator. And there's just not a lot of room. It's a van. It's not a huge one. And so we do smaller dogs. We could probably do a 50-pound lab or something if we had to, but generally it's smaller dogs where we can come to the house. And that helps with elderly dogs that get stressed by the travel alone. It helps with dogs that aren't other dog friendly, when you don't want them to cross another dog. Walking through the store and being in the salon could be very extra stressful for them and could potentially be a bad situation. So it helps for that, but also there are just some people who they just want to save the time that it takes to drive here. And we do have a loading zone, which helps. So people can pull in and put their hazards on and run their dog in and leave and then come back.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, because they're not parking, they're just running in and out. So you can use that, which helps being downtown. It is hard and stressful sometimes to get your dog in and out of the car and that sort of thing for people. So sometimes it's, people who, it's not the dog that needs the mobile as much as the people. And so it's an extra service. So it is it's priced a little bit higher than our salon. Here, the groomers, we do schedule our dogs so we can pretty much work from start to finish. Some dogs do need a break. But you might get interrupted with a nail trim that, somebody comes in and needs a quick nail trim. So you'll put your dog, usually we have a little playpen back there, we can put them in. And then we do the nail trim and then they take back their dog. So they're interrupted. Sometimes it's phone calls. And, when they're on the van, there's no interruptions. You just are working with this dog from complete start to finish. So there is also that benefit for the dog of not having all of the other stimulation going on.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps. For a lot of dogs, it's just a better scenario. Some dogs like to come in, and it's not to replace the salon in any way. It's just, I think everybody has different needs. So whether it's the dog's need or the person's need, I think it's just an extra service to the community. We can reach people in southern Fort Collins who don't want to drive downtown and just expand our business. So we don't take it out every day, which has been good because we've had to learn how to work the van and the generator, and we've had a couple of issues with that, unfortunately. But we're learning, and it's like having a big RV. So there's a lot of maintenance to it,
On the
and right, and sometimes, especially like in the winter now, we're learning what that's like, and we need a little more startup time to get everything heated up. You can't bathe the dog in freezing cold water, so you need that water heater going and that sort of thing.
That's
so
very true.
Yeah, so just things we've had to think about and work with. So luckily our customers have been very patient. So there have been just the other morning we were running late because we couldn't get the the water working again after you have to de-winterize it every day. And I think it's going to be good. I think we're hoping maybe to get a vendor license and also be at some events selling food, dog food, dog treats. If we can, I know City Park has the truck rally, so I don't know if they'll let us in that, but there's so many dogs there that wouldn't it be great?
And everyone has a food truck for humans.
Yeah,
why don't we have a dog food truck?
Yeah. So
that's brilliant.
We're going to expand into that. So people will hopefully see the Wagz van. It's full of covered in bubbles and our orange and our blue bubbles. Actually, on the back, it has a picture of my dog's very first bath when she was a puppy, which just was really cute. So we stuck that on there. Yeah. So we're just trying to expand and have an extra service to help people who have a need and struggle to get their dog in, because grooming, I think some people don't realize the importance of grooming for a lot of different breeds in their health. Matting, when dogs get matted, it causes all kinds of problems and sometimes severe health problems. But things happen under the mats, and there's no oxygen to the skin, and they can get infections. And we shaved down a dog and found that its tail was swollen. It was so matted, and you couldn't even tell that the tail was swollen until we shaved it. And when you mat it, when they're that matted, it comes off. Like in the back case, we have a couple shaved fur. They come out like pelts, like they're one piece, and you have to just shave them all off. And so you never know what you're going to find under there. So it doesn't happen that often when they're that bad, but when it is, it's hard. It's painful for the animal to live like that, and as well to have it removed. And then they feel so much better when the mats are gone. Yeah. So just grooming is important between the nails and the fur and keeping them healthy. When you have certain breeds that have long fur, that it is hard to get them in and keep them groomed. So if we can come to them, then maybe that'll help more people be able to do it more regularly, so it's easier on the dog. The more you can get your dog groomed, if they're a breed that's like long hair and needs haircuts, the easier it'll be on them. They'll get used to it. It'll be an easier job all around. So we've seen dogs that have really struggled in the beginning, and over time they start to relax when they come, and the groomers are able to do it without a lot more, with less restraint. So some dogs take a couple people to really restrain enough to do their nails or, that sort of thing. But, and there have been a couple dogs where we've said, you know what, we can't finish this because the dog's going to hurt itself trying to wrestle us. We can only do so much to restrain it without hurting it. But that's the rare case. That's really a rare case, but it happens. Yeah. And it's important to keep them groomed. So we're just hoping that having a mobile grooming will help people who have a situation where that just seems more feasible to them. Yeah.
So Wagz Pet Market and Grooming, helping both people and animals in the best way that you can.
Yeah.
Love it. If people are interested in following your Instagram, what would that handle be?
I'm the wrong person to ask.
No.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's out there. So it's Wagz.
It's probably Wagz. I think we have Wagz Pet Market and Wagz Grooming. We have two separate, I do know. But my staff does those, so they're the ones that are on it and making really fun posts and that sort of thing.
It is fun.
Yeah, I know we have a Wagz Grooming is definitely, and I think it's either Wagz Market or Wagz Pet Market. Is our market one.
And if people want to stop by, you also have a website online?
Yes, wagscolorado.com is our website. You can order online. We do deliveries locally. It's within a 5-mile radius.
Oh, nice.
On Fridays. So we do need the order. If you can order by Monday, then we can pretty much have it by Friday, because if it's not in stock, we can order it. And if there's something that you're looking for, you can call us, but it's free with orders of $50 or more, and it's $6 if it's less than that. But most people who are ordering food, it's usually going to be around there anyway. So, yeah.
Okay. And then you're located down here in downtown Fort Collins if people want to stop in and check you all out.
Yeah, we're between Mountain and LaPorte, and on the other side of the alley from Town Pump.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoyed the conversation.
As always, I want to shout out Russell Isaac Long for all the wonderful music used here at the NoCo. Are you looking for a little bit of bonus content in addition to the regular episodes on the show? Look for us out there on the interwebs, on Facebook and Instagram, all at the NoCo. Until next time, peace!